live from Modine and from Franklin, North Carolina. Hello, Young. Good morning. How are you?
Um,
Yeah,
it's what's interesting is in Israel, when people say, "Hey, manishma,
yeah,
makale," everyone kind of like pauses for a minute, and
yeah,
there's usually a disclaimer.
yeah,
The thing that I usually say is, other than the war, things are like honey.
yeah,
It's,
yeah,
it's a colloquial expression, like, a kol dvash, like everything's smooth and, just flowing.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Very difficult situation. It just gets worse. Uh, Casualty numbers, as everyone knows, are high and higher.
Yeah.
The number to look at, though, is actually the wounded, which is close to 12,000.
Well,
And without going into too many details, I've been watching these videos in Hebrew of the brave wounded soldiers rehabbing themselves, being rehabbed in the hospital without limbs, having lost vision in one or both. It's just it's the sacrifice is horrific.
oh yeah.
Um,
I mean, as you know, I've been in bed for 2 days. Just
yeah,
really bad.
Refuah Shlema, a
Huh?
complete healing. We
It's
need you.
it's it's on its way, man. And Kathy's been she started getting this on Saturday, and I finally caught up with it on Monday. But it's like, you know, nobody's shooting at me. Um,
Yeah.
Nobody, I don't have rocket attacks. I don't have to go run to my basement. I don't know how I'd get out of bed to do it, but it's like they're, what these guys are going through there, and then of some soldiers that were killed yesterday.
Yeah.
That I don't know them, but in a way, I do. That one hit pretty hard, as I
Yeah.
got a message in the middle of the night. So
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
It's Again, just to remind people, the active duty soldiers are the 18, 19, 20-year olds.
Yeah,
Everyone else is a reservist. Means everyone else was dealing with the issues of buying an apartment, getting a mortgage, getting married, having children, changing jobs. And one thing, to mention, I don't know if people realize, our universities were supposed to open right after Sukkot.
yeah,
They have not opened yet. And the original plan, well, the alternative after the alternative after the alternative was the end of December. And we're literally days away from the end of December. Um, so it's a very tough situation. A little bit of potential good news. Um, British Airways, Air France, and Swissair have said that they are planning to resume flights at some point in January. These
okay,
are three major European carriers. Not a full schedule, but some flights. Whether it'll happen or not depends on the situation. Our Minister of Defense, our Chief of Staff are talking about several more months of fighting Hamas, um, but no one is being held to a date. One thing I wanted to explain, people, are writing to me saying, I don't understand what's going on with Lebanon, with Israel saying they're right up at the border. So when people get off, pull up a map of Lebanon and look towards the southern part of Lebanon where the Litani River is.
yeah,
UN Security Council resolution back in 2006, after the war in Lebanon, required Hezbollah to be north of the Litani River. They're not. they've got their troops and their elite units right up on the border. And this is ongoing. So we don't know yet what's going to happen still with Lebanon, whether
Yeah.
it'll be full-blown war now or full-blown war later. We don't know.
And
We honestly don't.
once again, if people don't have, there should be two things in everyone's house right now, preferably on the wall. Number one is a Middle East map. Kathy ordered one the other day, well, a few weeks ago off Amazon. The other is an Israel map, a good Israel map.
Yeah.
This should be two things that everybody has, so they can put it. Even if you've never been there, I know that being there, being on the ground, when I get a WhatsApp from someone, is personal. Maybe people have never been there, but that's one way that they can make it personal, is to at least have,
Very much so.
a map on the wall. When they see these things happen, they can go to that map and at least consider what's there.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Netanyahu, in a sort of mission statement, if you will, has defined the mission of this war. This is as of yesterday, in three areas, and I hope I can remember off the top of my head. I left my notes in the other room. The first is the destruction of Hamas
Mm-hmm.
and their ability to harm Israel.
Yeah.
Second is the demilitarization of Gaza, so they can't hurt Israel again. And the third is the de-radicalization of the people who self-identify as Palestinians. And I got to
Yeah.
tell you, that's the one where you've basically taken the cruise to Fantasy Island, because recent polls have indicated this is when people say, well, the average Gazan, the poor Gazan, who's, like, let's pray for the people. No, because between them and the Arabs, the so-called Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, what the world calls the West Bank, 84% of them support what Hamas did on October the 7th.
You know, mm, I guess the only way to deal with this would be the cruise to Fantasy Island would have to be on the Love Boat. And thinking you're actually in some
Yeah.
kind of reality. This whole idea, people need to go back and read. They need to read the exploits of David. They need to go back and read the Torah. They need to go back and read the books of history, Judges, Samuel, Chronicles, Kings. Read where it says you are to go in and have, kind of paraphrasing, you are to take vengeance over the enemies of Hashem. And in this powder puff Western mentality, people just cannot figure that out. It would
No.
be like, your neighbor coming over, slaughtering all of your children, and threatening to come back and slaughter your wife, and you're like, maybe I can negotiate. No, maybe I can kill him.
There were massive demonstrations in New York City on
Oh,
Christmas Day,
idiots.
and it appears the NYPD, who I used to remember being really tough, um, at least they were with us, finally making some arrests. Like, enough is enough. But the thing that's amazing is the call for an immediate ceasefire.
Yeah.
Now, Hamas has already turned that down. But no one is changing the verbiage at these demonstrations. And
No.
again, the call, I think to a certain degree, I've done a bit of a disservice to people I refer to the Intifada, the so-called Second Intifada, as the Oslo War, as do you. I think we're conditioning people not to think of it as the Intifada, not to think of buses being blown up on a daily basis, not to think of the Pesach Seder in Netanya, where at the Park Hotel,
Yeah.
we've kind of lost sight of what that means. So when they're out there in the streets chanting Intifada, Intifada, and again, it is amusing when someone goes over and says, you're chanting from the river to the sea, or you're making a sign that says from the river to the sea. What river are you talking about? What sea? It's funny that, and they're like, it doesn't matter. Sure it does. Sure it does.
Yeah. You
But
mentioned
we
the
live in
park.
a,
You mentioned the Park Hotel.
yeah.
I have an old acquaintance of mine. I think I introduced you to him a couple times. He had a shop there around from Moshe's, Don, and Don's family would always go to the Park Hotel for Pesach, and I was over. This was during the Oslo War, the Intifada, and I went over and I was talking to him, and he said, and I did not know this. And he said, yeah, normally my family goes there. He says, every year for I don't know how many years, we've gone to the Park Hotel. And he said, we've had a certain area that we sat in. He said, this year, for some reason, we just did not feel like we were supposed to be there. And the bomb went off right where they would have been sitting.
The idea, you mentioned about people grounding themselves in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible. I also wish people would read a little bit, at least, about current history. I mean, when I get a note from someone who asks me, so who is Hamas? Are they also Palestinians? Are they a different type of people? Where did they come from? It's like, have you not read anything about Israel in the last 20 years? And again, I understand I'm a licensed Israeli tour guide. I'm, a bit of an amateur historian, you know, working on my amateur status for 50 years now. Um, but it's kind of like, what do you guys think is going on? Um, and again, as I'm working on a presentation for America for a few, next month, I'm struggling with, what do I keep repeating? Because for
Yeah.
some people, it's impactful, but for others, it's kind of like white noise,
Well,
because their biblical understanding is somehow every, when the prophets promise that one day Shomron, Samaria will have vineyards again, the idea of actually getting your hands dirty
yeah.
or donating money to enable someone else to get their hands dirty for you and enjoying those sumptuous meals that Hayovel provides, it's kind of like it's going to get done magically.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way.
Well, you and I were discussing this. I was trying to put a couple of words together, and anybody that's emailed me in the last couple of days, I have not actually been totally coherent as I was emailing, and I was not in a vertical position. Okay, but I've been trying to keep up. Um, I'm starting to understand when this all started. For some reason, I just I started to read the prophet Jeremiah, and it just dawned on me, the full impact of it. Of nobody was listening to these men, nobody, and for some reason, Hanok, we think we've come along, and the multitudes are just going to listen. No, they're not. history is repeating itself. And I'm not
It's very
putting
true.
myself at the level, and I know you would not, of a Jeremiah or anybody else in Scripture.
Not at
But
all.
I say
Uh,
this to
so
say to other people that are out there, if you're feeling the same thing that we are, you're posting something on Facebook or social media about what's going on in Israel, and someone puts a meme up of a stupid cat trick. Um, you're posting something, and they're like, well, whatever. And the depth of people's posts, I'm not going to go there. I'm going
yeah,
to use a little bit of wisdom for
it's
just a moment. That's the first and only time today probably I'll do that. Don't be surprised when you feel like the purple striped cat in the room, that nobody wants to be around you because they're thinking maybe your stripes are going to wear off on them. This is the way it's been from the beginning, and this is
very
the
true.
way it's going to be till the end. Period.
One of the things, and I'm not going to go down the road of Nancy negativity, but one of
No.
the things that I found a bit amusing recently is when I encounter either in person or online in the social media, Jewish people my age or older who tell me Rabbi Kahana was right. And when we were out there in sub-zero temperature,
Yeah.
walking around, with placards, and we were out there at demonstrations fighting, and we were throwing rocks, yeah, fessing up, throwing rocks at the PLO demonstration over the heads of the police. Got away with that one. Where were they? It is now been 33 years since Rabbi Kahana was murdered
Well,
by Al Qaeda in New York.
uh,
So it's so interesting. Like now, it's like, or where were the people besides us that were saying we're going to surrender Gush Katif? We're going to uproot close to 9,000 Jews from Gaza? Where is this going to lead? And there's going to be a heck of an accounting in Israel when this war is over,
oh yeah.
because more and more information has come out. Again, this is not the time to go into it, of what we knew, what we didn't know, what systems we had, what we were counting on, what our basic assumptions were. And now we're in a horrific war. And we are dealing with Gaza. We're dealing with Judea and Samaria. We're dealing with Lebanon. We're dealing with Syria. We're dealing with Iraq. We're dealing with Yemen. And we're dealing with Iran directly. It's essentially a 7-front war.
Yeah.
And our good friends and partners, the American government, turned down our request for Apache helicopters. Now, we have 2 squadrons of Apache helicopters. Since the war started, they have been in use
Constant.
around the clock, to the degree that they've called up into the reserves Apache pilots between the ages of 55 and 60.
Wow.
Generally, in Israel, you don't fly after 51
No.
for the IDF, for the IAF, the Israel Air Force. So this is serious.
Well,
I've said before, we're a small nation.
the other side of that, Hanok, is not only you have older pilots, which sometimes, I mean, for America, I would probably put those older guys. I mean, I'd rather be in the I'd rather be in a Huey with a NOM-era pilot than anything else, but, because I've been there. But, I've worked choppers, okay? You know that. I work choppers, and, especially when you're in a desert climate, a helicopter is basically thousands of pieces and parts brought together that have one goal in their life, and that's to kill you. Um, a chopper
Yeah.
is a flying disaster area. It's actually not aerodynamically,
No.
it shouldn't fly. And so when you put that thing into a desert climate and you're running it with, low on maintenance the whole time, you can only do that so long. And so
Yeah.
for anybody that's thinking, well, let's just keep praying that America will stand with Israel. Um, how long are you going to pray against that rain?
The
There
thing
comes a
is,
time
yeah,
that you better just go ahead and start looking at reality of what is
yeah,
actually happening today. The
it's
only
true.
thing, the only thing you guys, the only thing you guys have on your side is the creator of the universe.
Yeah. The one of the elements of soul searching um, that has already begun is the fact that, and Caroline Glick revealed some of this information in a recent column of hers. Sometimes she's a little hard to swallow, as you know, but what she pointed out is for more than 20 years, Ehud Barak, former prime minister, launched us on this directive that all of the resources were going to go to the Israel Air Force, the
Hmm.
IAF. And we cut back on the number of armored divisions, we cut back on the number of tanks, we cut back on the artillery, because Israel was not ever going to be in a large conventional war again. Everything could be solved due to our air superiority. And related to that is we farmed out many of our munitions industries. We don't produce our own artillery shells. We don't produce the Iron Dome missiles. And that has put us in a really, really
Yeah,
difficult situation.
yeah.
So already in the midst of the war, we've already begun retooling the military industries to begin producing that. We don't produce our
Word.
own rifles.
Hmm.
It's as big. I mean, and Biden with this obsession that Jews in Judea and Samaria are threatening the Arab residents is just beyond belief.
Well,
But anyway,
if you put the current president involved in anything like your rifle construction, manufacturing, his number one thing would be that the magazine could only hold 10 rounds. I mean, total stupid. I don't know what it is about the prime ministers of Israel. You have all of these war heroes that somehow they pass through. It's like in order to go from war hero to prime minister, they have to go through a room, some kind of a. Maybe you guys have done this technology that sucks their brain out uh,
it it it
before they
it,
get
it
there.
comes with becoming a politician,
Yeah, I think so.
and we love our generals. That's
Yeah.
one of the elements of our society. Of course, it shouldn't surprise anyone that of all of our prime ministers, I look back very fondly at Menachem Begin,
Hmm.
who had been the commander of the Irgun, our underground army fighting against the British. Anyway, Begin was did not have an extensive military background. He served in the Polish army, but he was enamored of our generals, and that's why Arik Sharon, who this was the first Lebanon war, This is why Begin had sort of the hood pulled over his eyes, and Sharon went and did whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
The combat that our men and women are in the midst of right now is based upon a series of decisions made by previous governments not to engage the tunnel structures of Hamas.
Yeah.
That incredibly large tunnel that everyone has seen pictures of recently, that was only 400 meters, meaning think of 4 football fields from the entrance that Gazans with work permits and who were going to our hospitals would come through. We knew it was there, but we didn't want to deal with it. We have never had this extensive a war against the terrorists of Gaza. But you look back and you say, what if we had dealt with this in 2009 and 2012, 2014, 2017? I could go through, because every 2 years or so there was an eruption.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
and the world doesn't see it. The world doesn't see it.
Now, if we could go back to 2005, Ariel
Yeah.
Sharon and George W. Bush, um, in my opinion, Bush should be brought up on charges, accessories to war crimes. Because if it had not been for his collusion with and probable pressure on Ariel Sharon,
Yeah.
Gaza would have never been given to the Palestinians, and we would
No.
not be talking about this today.
And the idea that they're talking about, at least the Americans talk about the Palestinian Authority running Gaza. I mean,
Oh yeah,
it's the whole world has gone insane. But again, remember, you can commit atrocities against Jews, and that is a legitimate act of resistance in the eyes of much of the world. And I say much of the world because if you remember back to the Nixon administration, the silent majority, people write me notes telling me how many of America's Christians, how many of America's Messianics and Hebrew roots people support Israel. But you know what? We don't see it or hear it. And it makes me wonder if people are blowing smoke up my skirt.
well, pretty much they're too busy. But they're too busy posting things and doing conferences on should we be living by the Torah or not? If you haven't come
Yeah,
to
they're still agonizing over that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can't come to the realization of that truth, you need to go find something to do because
And I got to tell you, I'm sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead,
go
Mike.
ahead.
Where I live, except for that tree in the supermarket that they were selling with the Israeli flags around it, I essentially live in a world without Christmas.
Yeah.
If I were in Bethlehem, or if I was in the Christian quarter in the old city of Jerusalem, I would have known it's Christmas. It's so not a thing here. And not only that, January 1st, I have a cavity. I made an appointment with the dentist. And the receptionist said to me, okay, 3 o'clock, Rishon B'Yanuar. And I'm thinking, that's so odd because that means the 1st of January. And I asked her, are you sure? She's like, yeah. It's not a thing here. And I am amazed. You see, the issue of whether people observe Christmas or not is not, that's not a battle I'm going to wage. I do get discomforted when people tell me, well, I observe it as the birthday of Yeshua, Jesus. When a cursory look at the gospel accounts and a basic teeny knowledge of Jewish society would tell you for sure he was born during Sukkot.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, duh.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, if you
and
want to have a party at the end of December, say, I want to have a party at the end of December.
yeah,
I want to fit in with my neighbors.
yeah,
Then fit in with your neighbors.
yeah, yeah.
But
I
don't,
want, uh,
but someone actually wished me a Merry Christmas on my post
oh, fun.
on the Harabayit, on the Temple Mount. Wrote me Merry Christmas.
Wow.
Ho,
Huh.
ho, ho.
Yeah. Ho, ho. Amazing. It's just amazing. The day that we live in right now. Um, I was going to say something and I cannot remember what it was. So maybe it
I'm
probably
sorry.
shouldn't be said
You
today.
need to rest, man. You need to rest.
Yeah, well, whatever. You know me well enough. What's the chances?
I hear you, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, take care. Be safe, man. And
You too. And just everyone keep in mind in your hearts our brave soldiers and our poor hostages, and may we destroy them and bring them all home safely.
amen.
Amen. Take care,
All right.
man.
Yeah.
Feel better, Mike.
Uh-huh.